Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Joining me now is my colleague, Forbes Money and Politics reporter, Kyle Mullins. Kyle, thanks so much for joining me.
Always great to be here, Brittany. Thanks for having me.
Of course, you have figured out the net worth of our Vice President, Kamala Harris. But before we reveal the big number, can you give us her backstory a bit for us?
Absolutely. So Kamala Harris was born in Oakland in 1964. Both of her parents were well-educated immigrants. They met at UC Berkeley. Her dad was an economics professor. Her mom was a breast cancer researcher. She was raised mostly by her mother. The pair divorced soon after they had their second daughter, Maya, who's Kamala's younger sister. And from there, Kamala Harris grew up in a, fairly working class, according to her at least, fairly working class family. She went to the historically black university, Howard University, for undergraduate. And she even interned in the senator's office while she was there, whose seat she would later fill.
And talk to us a little bit more about her law career and, more importantly, for us, how much she was making before she was elected to the Senate in 2016.
Of course. So she went to UC Hastings in San Francisco for law school, passed the bar on her second try, and then she became a prosecutor in the Bay Area. She worked at a couple different counties in the Bay Area while she was there. She ran for the district attorney of San Francisco in 2003. And she beat a two-term incumbent for that, and I have her salary here. She ended up making as much as $200,000 a year in that role, so a pretty well-paid public sector job. She won a second term there in 2007, and then became the Attorney General of California. She ran in 2010, won her election, and became AG in 2011. However, despite the fact that was coming with a little bit more prestige, actually came with less money. Her salary was down to $159,000 as the Attorney General of California.
And you've reported that the early 2010s shaped her finances because of hefty pensions, amongst other things. Can you expand on that for us?
So we talked about these 2+ decades that she already had before she was elected to the Senate in public sector positions. So we're looking at these very large pensions that she built up over that time. Those are worth, Forbes estimates, around $1 million today, her local government pension and her state government pension. And then the other thing that the early 2010s was really important for her is her mom passed away in the early 2010s. And it's not clear how much she inherited from her mom, but we do know that her and her sister ended up selling their mother's Oakland condo for about $700,000 in 2012. So we can assume that they made at least some money off of that.
And also during this time, she married her husband, Doug Emhoff. Can you talk about what he's bringing to this partnership financially?
Brought a lot more money, I can tell you that for sure. So Emhoff was an entertainment lawyer in the LA area at the time. Private sector law tends to bring in, be significantly more lucrative, I would say, than public sector law. So in addition to bringing more income to the partnership, he also brought larger retirement accounts. He had a pretty sizable investment portfolio, including some publicly traded stocks, which he had to offload and replace with some, index funds and other conflict avoidant investments once she became elected to the Senate.
So now let's talk about that time once she became elected to the Senate. What did her finances look like? What did her investments look like, as well as her savings?
So we'll start with her income. She got a salary bump from that attorney general position up to $174,000 a year as a senator. She had about $250,000 to $500,000 in a savings account at the time. These disclosures only require politicians to disclose ranges, so we don't know exactly how much she had. She also had a similar amount in retirement accounts. Plus, she had those two really big pensions. And then everything else on her disclosure at the time was Doug Emhoff and his large investment portfolio and retirement accounts. And then additionally, I should also note that soon after she was elected to the Senate, she and Emhoff bought a $1.8 million apartment in DC. So they kind of added that real estate to their portfolio as well.
So then let's fast forward 3 years. She announced she was running for president in 2019. How much did Forbes estimate she was worth then?
Yep. So we valued all the presidential candidates in 2019, 2020. In 2019, we put her net worth, which again includes Emhoff, at about $6 million. And then when she became vice president in 2021, we bumped that up to $7 million. So, you're starting to see that pattern of her fortune start growing over previous valuations.
Now let's talk about present day. Kamala Harris, as we know, has made history as the first woman vice president, as well as the first person of color to be vice president. How much is she worth?
We're estimating that Kamala Harris today is worth about $8 million. Again, that includes her husband, and that increase, which up from $7 million in 2021, up from $6 million in 2019, that's largely due to an increase in the value of the LA home that she shares with her husband, Doug Emhoff, as well as the addition of a federal pension that she recently became eligible for. The rest of her fortune actually looks remarkably similar to where it was in 2021.
So can you talk about the other assets that make up this net worth?
So we already talked about this roughly $1 million of pensions that she has from state and local government. There's also a federal pension that she recently became eligible for. That's worth about $150,000. The biggest asset in their portfolio is their Los Angeles home. It's their only piece of real estate left in their portfolio right now. It's worth about $4.4 million, Forbes is estimating, with about $2 million of debt on it. The rest of that is all, a variety of investments in retirement accounts, in her husband's IRA, that kind of stuff. They've got, several $1 million of that kind of thing.
And what is her salary as vice president?
Harris makes a little over $235,000 as vice president, and that salary has actually been frozen at that level since at least 2019.
And her and Doug Emhoff moved into the vice president residence when she and Joe Biden took office, but they ended up selling some of their real estate. Talk about that and the money behind there.
Yep. So they sold 2 properties soon after Harris became vice president. They were able to move into the vice president's residence, which they don't own, but they also don't have to pay for. So they offloaded some of their extra real estate. Harris had an apartment in San Francisco, where this is where she grew up. This is where she rose in politics. But she sold off her last piece of real estate there in 2021 for $860,000. That's a pretty hefty profit over what she paid for it 23 years earlier. She sold it for $560,000 more. And then the next thing that was sold also in 2021 was that same DC apartment. And she sold that one for about what they paid for it. So in actuality, they probably lost money on that apartment because of interest payments that they had to pay on their mortgage.
She's written some books between 2009 and 2019. How much money did she make from those?
Yep, I've got her book list here. So she's got a 2019 memoir called The Truths We Hold. She's got a 2019 kids book called Superheroes Are Everywhere. And she's got a 2009 criminal justice policy book called Smart on Crime. And so those 3 titles, they made her quite a bit of money in 2020 and 2021. She made $350,000 approximately in 2020, $450,000 in 2021. But after the sort of the hype of her becoming elected or being elected vice president died down a little bit, that income stream was cut off significantly. And so that trickled to $80,000 in 2022 and just $8,500 in 2023, which is our most recent disclosure.
So is there any indication of what she did with that money, as well as the money that she made with Doug Emhoff from selling those properties?
It's kind of unclear. It doesn't really show up very well in the disclosures that we have since she became vice president. On the one hand, these disclosures are pretty opaque. They only have to, politicians only have to report these sort of broad ranges. And so we don't actually know exactly how much she, maybe if it had been distributed across a number of different investments, it might not show up very easily. So it's difficult to say, but suffice to say, most of her financial assets look fairly similar to what they looked like in 2021.
So since she's taken office in 2021, Forbes estimates that her net worth grew $1 million, which is pretty good, but you're reporting it could have been even bigger if she invested her money differently. How so?
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, that increase is mostly due to an increase in the value of their Los Angeles home. And that's not really something that they had any sort of say in. A lot of that cash, if they hold a lot of their overall portfolio in cash, which doesn't grow with the market, even though the market is up almost 40% since she took office. So maybe if she had put some of that cash that she currently has in sort of checking and savings accounts, if she instead put that into funds that track the market, she might have seen a larger increase in her net worth. That said, it's also worth noting that they were making a lot more money, Harris and Emhoff, before she became vice president. Emhoff was still working at a law firm. He was raking in upwards of $1 million a year. Harris, of course, was writing books. She had lots of book income. But then after she became vice president, she wasn't writing books anymore. Emhoff stopped working as a lawyer. He became the second gentleman, and he has a number of official duties that come with that. He also became a law professor at Georgetown Law, but that doesn't pay quite as much as a private sector legal position. So overall, they may have just gotten used to having more income, and when that income stream was largely cut off, maybe they're spending more or they're saving less. That could have changed.
But no fear, because you're reporting that there's some optimism in her financial future. What could potentially make her fortune grow in the future?
Yeah, I wouldn't say Harris and Emhoff are risking homelessness or anything like that. They're going to be just fine even if they never make another dollar, and that seems pretty unlikely. So first off, Harris is going to be eligible for payouts from those pensions pretty soon. So she's going to have a steady source of regular income from those. And then additionally, she and Joe Biden, if they win the election in 2024, she's going to keep working as vice president. If maybe she goes on to become president one day, the vice presidency tends to be a potential springboard for the presidency. If she loses, that could actually be pretty good financially. She can do what her predecessor Mike Pence did, and what plenty of other politicians do. She can go write books, go on speaking tours, sell consulting services, generally cash in on her fame, and she could potentially make a lot of money doing that.
Kyle Mullins, per usual, I appreciate the conversation. I hope to see you again soon.
Always great to be here, Brittany. Thanks so much.